November of the year before last. A great river of life flows between you and a date so distant. Hardly, if at all, can you see cross so wide a waste. But to me it seems to have occurred. I will not say yesterday, but today. Suffering is one long moment. We cannot divide it by seasons. We can only record its moods and chronicle their return. With us, time itself does not progress, it revolves. It seems to circle round one center of pain, the paralyzing immobility of a life, every circumstance of which is regulated after an unchangeable pattern, so that we eat and drink and walk and lie down and pray, or kneel at least for prayer, according to the inflexible laws of an iron formula, this immobile quality that makes the dreadful day in the very minutest detail like its brother, seems to communicate itself to those external forces, the very essence of whose existence is ceaseless change. Of seed time or harvest, of the reapers bending over the corn, or the grape gatherers threading through the vines, of the grass in the orchard made white with broken blossoms, or strewn with fallen fruit, we know nothing and can know nothing. For us there is only one season, the season of sorrow. The very sun and moon seem taken from us. Outside the day may be blue and gold, but the light that creeps down through the thickly muffled glass of the small iron-barred window beneath one sits is gray and night-guard. It is always twilight in one's cell, and is always midnight in one's heart. And in the sphere of thought, no less than in the sphere of time, motion is no more. The thing that you personally have long ago forgotten, or can easily forget, is happening to me now, and will happen to me again tomorrow. Remember this, and you will be able to understand a little of why I am writing to you, and in this manner writing. A week later I am transferred here. 3 more months go over, and my mother dies. You knew none better how deeply I loved and honored her. Her death was so terrible to me that I, once a lord of language, have no words in which to express my anguish and my shame. Never, even in the most perfect days of my development as an artist, could I have had words fit to bear so august a burden, or to move with sufficient stateliness of music through the purple pageant of my incommunicable woe. She and my father had bequeathed me a name they had made noble and honored, not merely in literature, art, archaeology, and science, but in the public history of my own country, in its evolution as a nation. I had disgraced that name eternally. I had made it a low byword among low people. I had dragged it through the very mire. I had given it to brutes that they might make it brutal, and to fools that they might turn it into a synonym for folly. What I suffered then and still suffer is not for pen to write or paper to record. My wife, at that time kind and gentle to me, rather than I should hear the news from indifferent or alien lips, traveled, ill as she was, all the way from Genoa to England to break me to herself the tidings of so irreparable, so irredeemable a loss. Messages of sympathy reached me from all who had still affection for me, even people who had not known me personally, hearing what a new sorrow had come into my broken life, wrote to ask that some expression of their condolence should be conveyed to me. You alone stood aloof, sent me no message, and wrote me no letter. Of such actions, it is best to say what Virgil says to Dante, of those whose lives have been barren in noble impulse and shallow of intention. Non ragioniam di lor, ma guarda e passa. Let us not speak of them, but look and pass on. 3 more months go over. The calendar of my daily conduct and labor that hangs on the outside of my cell door, with my name and sentence written up, tells me that it is Maytime. My friends come to see me again. I inquire, as I always do after you, I am told that you are in your villa at Naples and are bringing out a volume of poems. At the close of the interview, it is mentioned casually that you are dedicating them to me. The tidings seemed to give me a sort of nausea of life. I said nothing, but silently went back to my cell with contempt and scorn in my heart. How could you dream of dedicating a volume of poems to me without first asking my permission? Dream, do I say? How could you dare to do such a thing? Will you give as your answer that in the days of my greatness and fame I had consented to receive the dedication of your early work? Certainly I did so, just as I would have accepted the homage of any other young man beginning the difficult and beautiful art of literature. All homage is delightful to an artist, and doubly sweet when youth brings it. Laurel and bay leaf wither when aged hands pluck them. Only youth has a right to crown an artist. That is the real privilege of being young, if youth only knew it. The days of abasement and infamy are different from those of greatness and fame. You have yet to learn that prosperity, pleasure, and success may be rough of grain and common in fiber, but that sorrow is the most sensitive of all created things. There is nothing that stirs in the whole world of thought or motion to which sorrow does not vibrate, terrible if exquisite pulsation. The thin, beaten-out leaf of tremulous gold that chronicles the direction of forces that the eye cannot see is in comparison coarse. It is a wound that bleeds when any hand but that of love touches it, and even then must bleed again, though not for pain. You could write to the governor of Wandsworth Prison to ask my permission to publish my letters in the Mercure de France, corresponding to our English Fortnightly Review. Why not have written to the governor of the prison or at Reading to ask my permission to dedicate your poems to me, whatever fantastic description you may have chosen to give of them? Was it because in the one case the magazine in question had been prohibited by me from publishing the letters, the legal copyright of which you were of course perfectly well aware was and is vested entirely in me, and in the other you thought that you could enjoy the wilfulness of your own way without my knowing anything about it till it was too late to interfere? The mere fact that I was a man disgraced, ruined, and in prison should have made you, if you desire to write my name on the forepage of your work, beg it of me as a favor, an honor, a privilege. That is the way in which one should approach those who are in distress and sit in shame. Where there is sorrow, there is holy ground. Some day you will realize what that means. You will know nothing of life till you do. Robbie and natures like his can realize it. When I was brought down from my prison to the court of bankruptcy between two policemen, Robbie waited in the long dreary corridor, that before the whole crowd, whom an action so sweet and simple hushed into silence, he might gravely raise his hat to me, as handcuffed and with bowed head I passed him by. Men have gone to heaven for smaller things than that. It was in this spirit and with this mode of love that the saints knelt down to wash the feet of the poor, or stooped to kiss the leper on the cheek. I have never said one single word to him about what he did. I do not know to the present moment whether he is aware that I was even conscious of his action. It is not a thing for which one can render formal thanks in formal words. I share it in the treasury house of my heart. I keep it there as a secret debt that I am glad to think I can never repay. It is embalmed and kept sweet by the myrrh and cassia of many tears. When wisdom has been profitless to me and philosophy barren, and the proverbs and phrases of those who have sought to give me consolation as dust and ashes in my mouth, the memory of that little lowly silent act of love has unsealed for me all the wells of pity made the desert blossom like a rose, and brought me out of the bitterness of lonely exile into harmony with the wounded, broken, and great heart of the world. Sorry about that. When you are able to understand not merely how beautiful Robbie's action was, but why it meant so much to me, and always will mean so much, then perhaps you will realize how and in what spirit you should have approached me for permission to dedicate to me your verses. It is only right to state that in any case I would not have accepted the dedication, though possibly it would under other circumstances have pleased me to have been asked. I would refuse the request for your sake, irrespective of any feelings of my own. The first volume of poems that in the very springtime of his manhood a young man sends forth into the world should be like blossom or flower of spring, like the white thorn in the meadow at Magdalen or the cowslips in the Cumnor fields. It should not be burdened by the weight of a terrible, a revolting tragedy, a terrible, revolting scandal. If I had allowed my name to serve as herald to the book, it would have been a grave artistic error. It would have brought a wrong atmosphere around the whole work, and in modern art, atmosphere accounts for so much. Modern life is complex and relative. Those are its two distinguishing notes. To render the first, we require atmosphere with its subtlety of nuances, of suggestion, of strange perspectives. As for the second, we require background. That is why sculpture has ceased to be a representative art, and why music is a representative art, and why literature is and has been and always will remain the supreme representative art. Your little book should have brought with it Sicilian and Arcadian airs, not the pestilent foulness of the criminal dock or the close breath of the convict's cell. Nor would such a dedication as you proposed have been merely an error of taste in art. It would, from other points of view, have been entirely unseemly. It would have looked like a continuance of your conduct before and after my arrest. It would have given people the impression of being an attempt at foolish bravado, an example of that kind of courage that is sold cheap and bought cheap in the streets of shame. As far as our friendship is concerned, Nemesis has crushed us both like flies. The dedication of verses to me when I was in prison would have seemed a sort of silly effort at smart repartee, an accomplishment on which in your old days of dreadful letter writing, days never I sincerely hope for your sake to return, you used openly to pride yourself, and about which it was your joy to boast. It would not have produced the serious, the beautiful effect which I trust, I believe indeed, you had intended. Had you consulted me, I would have advised you to delay the publication of your verses for a little, or if that proved displeasing to you, to publish anonymously at first, and then you had won lovers by your song, the only sort of lovers really worth the winning, you might have turned round and said to the world, "These flowers that you would admire are of my sowing, and I now offer them to one whom you regard as a pariah and an outcast, as my tribute to what I love and reverence and admire in him." But you chose the wrong method and the wrong moment. There is a tact in love and a tact in literature. You were not sensitive to either. I have spoken to you at length on this point, in order that you should grasp in full bearings and understand why I wrote at once to Robbie, in terms of such scorn and contempt of you, and absolutely prohibited the dedication, and desire that the words I had written of you should be copied out carefully and sent to you. I felt that at last the time had come when you should be made to see, to recognize, to realize a little of what you had done. Blindness may be carried so far that it becomes grotesque, and an unimaginative nature if something be not done to rouse it. will become petrified into absolute insensibility, so while the body may eat and drink and have its pleasures, the soul whose house it is may, like the soul of Brancadoria in Dante, is dead absolutely. My letter seems to have arrived not a moment too soon. It fell on you, as far as I can judge, like a thunderbolt. You describe yourself in your answer to Robbie as being deprived of all power of thought and expression. Indeed, apparently you can think of nothing better than to write to your mother to complain. Of course, she, with that blindness to your real good that has been her ill-starred fortune and yours, gives you every comfort she can think of, and lulls you back, I suppose, into your former unhappy, unworthy condition, while, as far as I am concerned, she lets my friends know that she is very much annoyed at the severity of my remarks about you. Indeed, it is not merely to my friends that she conveys her sentiments of annoyance, but also to those, a very much larger number, I need hardly remind you, who are not my friends, and I am informed now, and through channels very kindly disposed to you and yours, that in consequence of this great deal of the sympathy that by reason of my distinguished genius and terrible sufferings had been gradually but surely growing up for me, has been entirely taken away. People say, "Ah, he first tried to get the kind father put in prison and failed. Now he turns round and blames the innocent son for his failure. How right we were to despise him. How worthy of contempt he is. It seems to me that when my name is mentioned in your mother's presence, if she has no word of sorrow or regret for her share, no slight one, in the ruin of my house, it will be more seemly if she remains silent. And as for you, don't you think, now, that instead of writing to her to complain, it would have been better for you in every way to have written to me directly, and to have had the courage to say to me whatever you had or fancied you had to say? It is nearly a year ago since I wrote that letter. You cannot have remained during that entire time deprived of all power of thought and expression. Why did you not write to me? You saw by my letter how deeply wounded, how outraged I was by your whole conduct. More than that, you saw your entire friendship with me set before you, at last, in its true light, and by a mode not to be mistaken. Often in old days, I had told you that you were ruining my life. You had always laughed. When Edwin Levy, at the very beginning of our friendship, seeing your manner of putting me forward to bear the brunt and annoyance and expense even of that unfortunate Oxford mishap of yours, if we must so term it, in reference to which his advice and help had been sought, warned me for the space of a whole hour against knowing you. You laughed, as at Bracknell I described to you my long and impressive interview with him, when I told you how even that unfortunate young man, who ultimately stood beside me in the dock, had warned me more than once that you would prove far more fatal in bringing me to utter destruction than any even of the common lads whom I was foolish enough to know. You laughed, though not with such a sense of amusement. When my more prudent or less well-disposed friends either warned me or left me on account of my friendship with you, you laughed with scorn. You laughed immoderately when, on the occasion of your father writing his first abusive letter to you about me, I told you that I knew I would be the mere cat's paw of your dreadful quarrel and come to some evil between you. But every single thing had happened as I had said it would happen, as far as the result goes. You had no excuse for seeing how all things had come to pass. Why did you not write me? Was it cowardice? Was it callousness? What was it? The fact that I was outraged with you and had expressed my sense of outrage was all the more reason for writing. If you thought my letter just, you should have written. If you thought it in the smallest point unjust, you should have written. I waited for a letter. I felt sure that at last you would see that if old affection, much protested love, and the thousand acts of ill-requited kindness I had showered on you, the thousand unpaid debts of gratitude you owed me, that if all these were nothing to you, mere duty itself, most barren of all bonds between man and man, should have made you right. You cannot say that you seriously thought I was obliged to receive none but business communications from members of my family. You knew perfectly well that every 12 weeks Robbie was writing to me a little budget of literary news. Nothing can be more charming than his letters, in their wit, their clever concentrated criticism, their light touch. They are real letters. They are like a person talking to one. They have all the quality of a French causerie intime, and in his delicate modes of deference to me, appealing at one time to my judgment, at another to my sense of humor, at another to my instinct for beauty or to my culture, and reminding me in 100 subtle ways that once I was to many an art arbiter of style and art. The supreme arbiter to some, he shows how he has the tact of love as well as the tact of literature. His letters have been the little messengers between me and the beautiful unreal world of art, where once I was king, and would have remained king indeed, had I not let myself be lured into the imperfect world of coarse, uncompleted passions, of appetite without distinction, desire without limit, and formless greed. Yet when all is said, surely you might have been able to understand, or conceive at any rate in your own mind, that even on the ordinary grounds of mere psychological curiosity, it would have been more interesting to me to hear from you than to learn that Alfred Austin was trying to bring out a volume of poems, or that Street was writing dramatic criticisms for the Daily Chronicle, or that, by one who cannot speak a panegyric without stammering, Mrs. Meynell had been pronounced to be the new Sibyl of Style. Ah, had you been in prison, I will not say through any fault of mine, for that would be a thought too terrible for me to bear, but through fault of your own, error of your own, faith in some unworthy friend, slip in sensual mire, trust misapplied, love ill bestowed, or none, or all of these, do you think I would have allowed you to eat your heart away in darkness and solitude, without trying in some way, however slight, to help you bear the bitter burden of your disgrace? Do you think that I would not have let you know that if you suffered, I was suffering too? That if you wept, there were tears in my eyes also? If you lay in the house of bondage and were despised of men, I out of my griefs had built a house in which to dwell until your coming, a treasury in which all that men had denied to you would be laid up for your healing, 100-fold in increase. If bitter necessity or prudence to me, more bitter still, had prevented my being near you, and robbed me of the joy of your presence, though seen through prison bars and in a shape of shame, I would have written to you in season and out of season, in the hope that some mere phrase, some single word, some broken echo even of love might reach you. If you had refused to read my letters, I would have written none the less, so that you should have known that at any rate there were always letters waiting for you. Many have done so to me. Every 3 months, people write to me or promise to write me. Their letters and communications are kept. They will be handed to me when I go out of prison. I know that they are there. I know the names of the people who have written them.